I'd like to welcome everyone. Just a quick reminder, we will be recording this session. So if you don't want to be recorded, you can deactivate your camera in Zoom. I'm Michael Ward in Silver Spring, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C. My co-organizer and co-founder of these sessions, along with Barry Strugetz, is Redmond Entwistle in London. Good afternoon, Redmond.
Afternoon, Mike. Hi, everyone.
I'd like to thank you all for coming today and joining with other students practicing Tai Chi in the lineage of Professor Cheng. These sessions began as a way to stay connected during a time of social isolation. They have since evolved into a forum honoring that lineage by sharing more of our Tai Chi practice in a spirit of fellowship, scholarship, and mutual respect. We meet here every Wednesdays at the same time, so please feel free to share details of these sessions with your students, classmates, and teachers. Just a quick reminder, this is the last session until September 8th. We'll be taking a break during the month of August and the first week of September. A couple of quick announcements. Daniel Altschuler is going to be doing another series on Chinese medicine for the curious and inspired. That session will begin when we resume the forum on September 8th. Details will be in the chat. Also, Barbara Davis is going to be offering a class on the Gateway to the I Ching, the Chinese Book of Changes. This sequence of classes will cover the history and significance of the I Ching, what is in it, and how to use it. The sequence is divided into 3 5-week levels. The first level will run September 13th through the October 11th. An overview of the I Ching contents and how to use it will be that first session. Again, details will be in the chat for that. Lastly, just want to remind everybody that Maggie Newman's Archives 1 and 2 recordings of her teachers, interviews with her, of her teaching, interviews with her, and her doing both solo and sword form are now available for streaming, and also details of how to access that streaming will be in the chat. Today, we're going to be having a session on Professor Cheng's lectures on Confucius. Over the course of teaching in New York, Professor Cheng gave a number of lectures in which he introduced his students to the writings of different Chinese sages. The foremost among them was Confucius, to whom the Shr Jung school in New York was dedicated, and from whose concept of Shr Jung, or correct timing, its name is derived. We'll take a look at previously unseen footage of Professor Cheng introducing his lectures on Daxue, the Great Learning, as well as the memories and notes of some former Shr Jung students who were present at the lectures. As always, today we'll be following a video of Professor Cheng doing his first third of the form. Video was shot by Ken Van Sickle. We thank him for letting us use it. We'll go through that twice, and then we'll go to Nancy Caronia, and I'll introduce her. I guess I'll introduce her now. No, I'll introduce her when we finish with Professor Cheng. So let's go ahead and get in position, and we'll do 2 rounds with Professor, and then I'll introduce Nancy. Redmond, we're not hearing you.
Redmond, you're muted.
What of left? Thanks. What of right? Roll back. Press. push, single whip, lift hands, strike with shoulder, white crane spreads wings, brush left knee, play guitar, brush left knee, step forwards, block, parry, punch, withdraw, push, cross hands, and back to the beginning. Preparation. Raise hands. Ward off left. Ward off right. Roll back. Press. Push. Single whip. Lift hands. Strike with shoulder. White crane spreads wings. Brush left knee. Play guitar. Brush left knee. Step forwards. Block. Parry. Punch. Withdraw. Push. Cross hands.
We'll now go to Nancy Caronia. Nancy's an associate professor at West Virginia University, where she teaches literature, writing, and cultural studies. She began her practice of Tai Chi in New York City in 1989 with Maggie Newman, and has since studied with Ben Lowe, Lindsay Williams, and Wolf Lowenthal, along with cultural teachings from Ed Young and guidance from Margaret Beatty, Kathy Chow, Sarah Wells, Carol McGonigal, and Carol Yamasaki. She studied other forms of Tai Chi, including Wu and Yang long form, but always returns to the Cheng form. She is currently teaching Tai Chi on Zoom to beginners and women in advanced studies. Nancy, we'll follow you now.
Thank you.
Preparation. Raise hands. Ward off left. Roll back. Press. Push. Single whip. Lift hands. Strike the shoulder. White crane spreads wings. Brush left knee. Play guitar. Brush left knee. Step forwards. Block, parry, punch, withdraw, push, cross hands. And heels together.
Thank you, Nancy. That was beautiful. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, just like to say two things. I want to read something from Carol Yamasaki that she used to give to her students at Wayne State. And it says, relaxation is at the heart of the Tai Chi Chuan practice. It is not by learning myriad techniques, but by releasing the blockages in the body that one becomes able to develop rootedness and open to the flow of qi. So in Taoism, the philosophy underlying the practice, it is not by striving to better oneself, but by letting go of desires, ambitions, and tensions that one comes into harmony with the Tao and reveals one true's nature. If you were truly relaxed, what would you do? Who would you be? And so I say thank you to everyone here, especially to Michael, Redmond, and Barry for doing this for the last year. I thank all of my teachers and the women Tai Chi players in my life. And I want to say to anybody, I'll put in the chat that I do have a women's study group for those of you that are really interested in studying with other women Tai Chi players. I'd love to have you join me. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Is it possible for you to share what Carol wrote in a way that people could hold on to it and reread it?
I don't, it's a it's a JPEG file. I can send it to Redmond and then he can put it up on the.
Okay.
Yeah,
thing.
please. I'll add
Great.
it to the next newsletter.
Okay,
Thank you.
great.
Thank you. So thank you, Nancy. For today's presentation, we'd like to especially thank Daniel Altschuler for his generosity in translating the video of Professor Cheng's lecture that you'll see. We'd also like to thank Ed Young for his insights and encouragement for these sessions on Confucius. And we'd like to also thank all the presenters who will now share their memories and notes. We'll begin today's presentation with a short introduction by Barbara Davis. That'll be followed by a 10-minute video clip of Professor Cheng introducing the Daxue, the Great Learning, lecture delivered at 211 Canal Street. We'll then go to Natasha, followed by Bill Phillips and René Houtrides. and then finishing up with Stephen Rose sharing notes from Tam Gibbs. We'd like to then open it out to other people's notes and memories who were at the lectures, and then conclude with questions and comments from others. So without further ado, Barbara, if you want to go ahead and begin with your introduction.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or whatever. I wanted to echo the thanks from Nancy that this past year and a half has been really a wonderful opportunity for a lot of us to do kind of a continuing education in our Taiji practices, as well as networking and getting to know each other better. So this has been a silver lining to a difficult time. So I just wanted to start with talking just a little bit about Confucius, who you see a traditional rubbing behind me there of him. And so I put some of the information and resources in the chat. And so he was alive, the dates traditionally are 551 to 479 before the Common Era. And so it was, you know, a time of transition in China. Well, this was the smaller kingdoms at that time. And I think, like a lot of people in Taiji, I think we understand Taiji to be part of Taoism, part of Confucianism. And so there's an interesting interplay between the two throughout Chinese history. And Confucius was more in the realm of societal structure and responsibility of the individual, responsibility towards the state and towards the clan, towards the individual family within that. And so that's what some of what we're talking about today is going to address, is the kind of the hierarchy and responsibilities that we all have. And so he was very concerned with proper etiquette, proper conduct, morality, ethics, character, virtue, all these things. And in a way, there are a lot of people who describe Confucianism as being a religious practice. And there are temples to Confucius, there are holidays to Confucius, and he's revered as the first teacher. But when you talk about religion, you have to remember that there are different concepts of religion. And so some people describe it as a secular religion. So there's not like an overarching God deity, but rather it's, I guess, a form of humanism. You know, so we as humans have a responsibility to live up to certain ethics and such. And so this had a huge impact throughout Chinese history and spread into all of East Asia, of much, you know, wherever Chinese immigrants went, and had a big impact on family structure and everything, basically. And so within it, there are ideas like the doctrine of the mean and the Shr Jung, the correct timing, and all of that, and has been passed down through study of texts. These texts would have been memorized by schoolboys and needed to be memorized and commented on in terms of the passing the examinations. And so they just had a huge impact on all of Chinese culture. So when Professor Cheng came around in 1902, he's born into the end of traditional empire, right? And so it's the tail end, things are falling apart, and modernization is happening. And so Professor grew up at a time when, first of all, apparently they didn't have much money, and so he wasn't able to get a traditional education in the early years, but taught himself quite a bit. And undoubtedly, you know, just absorbed things that were around him, and he'd borrow books from neighbors to study and things like that. And he was very interested in the Confucian teachings, and at the same time was doing painting, calligraphy, typing. Responsibility to society, and you have that kind of inner cultivation of Taoism and the going with the flow and things like that, and it's all about it's all about fitting together like that. So the ideas fit together, the ends together, and to figure out what your role in society is and go with that flow, for instance. So you're bringing kind of these different streams together. And the texts that we're going to be talking about, like the Great Learning, the Doctrine of the Mean, the Analects, the I Ching, all of those texts are part of this whole Confucian canon, which the actual books in the canon changed throughout Chinese history. But there's kind of a core, you know, there's 5 classics, 6 classics, 4 classics. So you need to look at a chart to figure out which is which at what point in time, but they are all focused on some of the same basic elements. So the book of poetry, the book of changes, the book of history and such. And about 1,000 years ago is when a new version of the classics kind of was compiled, and that's called the 4 books. And so what we're going to be talking about right now is some of the lectures that Professor gave on those different traditional books that form part of the standard curriculum. And so put links so that you can read some of these. The Great Learning, for instance, is very short. Doctrine of the Mean is pretty short. And I should say the Doctrine of the mean does not mean mean people. It means center, you know, the average kind of balance. So, so with that, I think I'll just turn it over and back to Michael.
Thank you, Barbara. So we're going to begin with a 10-minute clip of Professor Cheng introducing the Daxue, the Great Learning. And then when that concludes, Natasha will talk about being at the lecture. There'll be some photos and relevant notes that she had taken.
古之曰明，明德于天下者。把这个我们所讲这个明德，这个头上就是三面明德。这个明德呢，要把它达到天下，终极的天下。我们中国中的天下是小的，现在天下太大了。先把这个明德要明的全天下都晓得，全世界 都能达到了，这个的法子呢，就先把他自己的果要治好。他要不把这个果治好了呢，这个明德明不出来。这个先自己果，这个自然的自然平行的，把这个果要治好呢，他要把自己的一个家先治好。家没治好，想去把这个果治好就很难了。 把这个家要治好呢，叫先修己心，都是讲根本。这一段就是把这个先明德明出来到天下去呢，先把自己果治好了，果治好啊，它的本就在家里头。你要想把这个家要是治好了呢，这个本啊就在心上。 这个就是上头跟着上头来的，唯有本末是有四种，这个明德是本，这个末呢就是心，就身体。 下来了。小物证。要修其心者嘛，先正其心；要正其心者嘛，先诚其意；要诚其意者嘛，先知其知。自知呢，在格物，这个一直讲下去，一直讲下去，你算啊，在知明明德世界，把这明德要得提下去嘛，先知结果，要这结果怎么先提其家，要提其家怎么先修其心，要修其心怎么先正其心，要正其心怎么先诚其意。要成其意者嘛，先知其知，这个是七段。这个七段呢，就是在明德到了要自己知为知啊，一共7节。这个是一套的，这个正套的，一直到了这个先知其知这个地方呢，到这个位置呢是7节。这个7节叫什么呢？就是讲啊。以明德为本，以自己知为末。你要这个明德在心要的德呢，你能够啊就自己知。再没了这一句啊，自知在格物啊。现在这本的大学最重要的就是这一句了，就是没了这一句，自知在格物。现在这部大学的这个问题呀、从汉早起，宋学把它推翻了，推翻了嘛，这个汉早2000多年，宋学正宗嘛是要800多年。那么他讲啊，这个格物的问题呀、他是讲现在这种科学的方法是格物，一样样东西拿来细细的研究来分析这格物。把这样东西啊要穷到底，这事理都明白，他是这样子格物。从这个赖居堂先生所讲的这个反了，中国反了。所以现在我们讲这个大学，在中国2500年的学问呢，在控制的这个中间学问中也最重要呢，就这头一个就开始是这个。自知在格物，他不是这样讲法。他说我们啊是喜欢吃东西一切好的，全好的， 房子要住好的，我也要听无线电，我也要做汽车，这一切都是物。所有我们所需要的全是物。要这种除了一个身体所需要的，比方说男女夫妇，那没办法割的，这个性欲上头的，这个是一定是有的。但是我吃的，不吃的饿死了，这饮食男女这4个字就不能说把这个物割除的。饮食男女，我太太我吃饭，这个没法动。那么现在所讲的怎么叫格物呢？一切是物，这个格字格字就是割杀，等于把人这东西裁掉，这个花不要了，把它剪掉裁掉，这叫割。除，我拿开，去掉它，所以割就是割除，就割杀。这个物怎么能割杀呢？就是我们过分的。我今天全软了，我够了，不会冻死了。好，我一定要全好，缺的这么好法。我吃够吃饱了，我非要一定吃什么的好东西，这个是叫物欲。我住嘛随便都可以嘛，住什么房子我一定要住高楼大厦，住好的。我车子要买好的，这个就是格物。这个在欲望之外的这个范围在这个欲望之外的不要。这控制道理就是讲，不能有过分的要求。这个人这个物欲有过分要求世界就不行了，闹。一切不平等，一切的事情都在这一个字上的，就在那格物这一个字上的。中国从这个2000多年的学问就这个物的这个上头很大。比方说我们中国讲道德的，就完全讲一本讲明德，将自己修身明德为本的。现在要说我这样的东西，我把这个东西要打破了，你都这个研究，一样样东西分析，这个与我们人没相干了。这个人只要确保男女夫妇不要冻死就行了。你仔细想想，这个都没用的。比方说，我今天讲一句话，你们一般人想想看，我们就靠这个现代科学，我们人就靠科学。这一天一个地下了，好，大家都在地狱里头。这个电灯公司啪一下子停工了，罢工了，我们都完了。我们起也不能起，走也不能走，完了。这个人不是靠人吗？依赖人吗？中国的道理要多理，要自力更生，不能要靠人的。这个生活全靠人，只要电灯公司他们一罢工，都完了。所以今天我们讲这个发这个案1700年这个讲错了。有一天大概的人跟我讲他说威力讲改在这个地方，他说我不懂，我没办法改，只好叫他这么乱七八糟改下去。他不懂，他说我看不是这样讲的呀，他晓得他讲不出来。有许多地方这个威力很厉害，威力许多他我不懂这个地方我不懂，讲不明白，他只好这么改下去，所以没有办法，全错了。所以今天起这个句，就要再注意这个字在格物，反的。上头一举因为明德天下者一直到了，先自己知为知，这个是一套训的，到了我自己本身为止。自呢在格物，教你晓得什么？先要把这个过分的物欲，你不要要求之后你再能晓得。你是真知了，你真知了呢，你就叫人的道理走。慢慢的讲东西跟你讲。
So Natasha, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, it just, because I can now understand most of what he's saying, it just makes me feel, oh God, I wish I was studying with him now. Then I didn't know anything. So anyhow, it's a pity. But now you've seen the video clip. I think Redmond was going to put on some photographs to show you the atmosphere in the room, some of the photos. As you can see, this is like the beginning of technology, lots of wires around for making a tape or a video or something, mostly tape recorders. And we weren't such a huge group, but there we were.
Was this 211 Canal Street, Natasha?
211 Canal Street, yeah. And at the time, I remember not understanding much of Dr. Ren's translation of it. Of course, now because I understand more the Chinese, then I can understand the English in a funny way around. But we're looking at one bit of the text today. And so I'll just show you after Redmond's finished the pictures. Professor Cheng was so lively, as you can see. He was just, doing Tai Chi all the time. He was just light and lively, and yeah, it's just, as Katie said, he said he was practicing all the time. Well, you can see that just by the photographs even. This is a photo, I think it must be, I don't know if it was the whole group that was in the Daxue, if it was just that Dr. Ren was there that day. But a lot of the people were in the lectures there. So I'll show you the book that we were using, which is this one. It's a very small book, and the place in question that we're looking at today. Sorry, I'll just show you. There's actually Professor Cheng has written some in his own handwriting. You see how beautiful that is, about the yin and the yang and everything. And then starts the text. And then the chapter in question, it starts here. And the text is only the bold one that sticks up. And all the rest is Professor Cheng's commentary. And the bit that we're looking at today starts with here. No, sorry, here. I'm looking at it and it looks backwards to what I'm seeing. That's why I'm having difficulty, sorry. This starts here, the text, this bit, these 3 lines here take up all of commentary for that page, etc., until the next bit that sticks up. And then, so here are my notes from, with the date.
Is that the second part?
No, it's just
It's
the
second part of the
the
book.
3rd chapter, I think. The 3rd chapter about, it starts with 骨子与明明德, that bit there. And so what we did is we would copy down as quickly as we can. Therefore the writing is bad, but we'd copy down the Chinese, and then
Yeah, Natasha, I'll show it on.
Dr. Ren would actually dictate the commentaries. But I'm seeing that the clip had
You can tell the page is page 5.
yeah.
You're talking about page 5.
Yeah. 古之于明明德欠下职 etc., all the things. And so
先治其国
nowadays I would do it more like this, that I would write the pronunciation.
Natasha, do you want to Should we
Should I
show on
read that bit?
screen?
But actually,
Do you want to show
the
from your text you've written on the? If you look on the screen, you can see your.
yeah, this is what I'm doing nowadays to learn it. I'm putting the Chinese and then the pronunciation and then a vague translation. And then what I do, and I'm using calligraphy to practice the things so that it gets into my head, because I'm old now, so things get into my head very slowly and they go out very quickly. But eventually things stick. And then what I find myself doing is reading it, a sentence, a short phrase at a time, until I start to get the feeling. But actually listening to Professor Cheng on that clip has done it even better. So the bit that he was reading, this is the translation at the bottom here, is the translation that Dr. Ren gave us. Among the ancient, he who wished to have the shining virtue illuminated throughout the empire first govern his kingdom, wishing to govern his kingdom. Let me just read it from, I think. Wishing to govern his kingdom well, he first managed his family in good order. Wishing to manage his family in good order, he first cultivated his own person. Wishing to cultivate his own person, he first ratified his heart. Wishing to rectify his heart. Wishing to rectify his heart, he first rendered sincere his thoughts. Wishing to render sincere his thoughts, he first let his innate intellect reveal itself. The way to reveal the innate intellect is to eradicate his unnatural desires. So what Professor Cheng in that clip was talking about was this controversy that was going on between two dynasties, as he mentioned, and as was mentioned in the notes, between this phrase of 制止在各物, and the understanding of that, and it makes a big difference. So I think you probably saw it in the translation, in fact. So I'm not sure really what I should do more than that.
Do you want to read your note, Natasha, from that day? From that?
Well, it was actually in the translation of what it said. In order,
I think it's useful. Why don't you go ahead and read it?
Yeah, because this is between the Sung dynasty and the
or the second page.
So Leitze says, in order to know the resides in the Ge-U, i.e. kill the desire of excess of things. This is dictated by, I'm taking it down from dictation. This does not stop at normal desires, i.e. he's not talking about these, he's talking about unnatural desire, excessive desire, greediness. Zhi he calls innate intellect, not knowledge. So that's the difference when they said first in the Sung dynasty, they said you have to investigate everything fully to be able to understand, so that you can go from yourself to your mind, to your heart being rectified, and then the body being corrected, and then the family being corrected, and then the country being corrected, and then governing everything properly. He says, Zhi is called innate, not knowledge, says that man has an intellect which is always blocked by unnatural excessive desires. If he can restrain these desires, he returns to his original natural condition, i.e., therefore his intellect can reveal itself. Cheng Yu uses the last sentence as an 8th step, whereas Leitze used it as an explanation of how to get Zhi, that Zhi, which is, where is it? It's on the other page. Leitze's interpretation provides a logical sequence, whereas Cheng's arrives at a gap. And then he was mentioning, Professor Cheng was mentioning also that Legge, James Legge, agrees with Leitze, although he didn't actually see his version. He, not having seen, but he actually from the translation, he thought something was wrong, something was fishy about this. And he was correct to think there was something wrong with the usual translation. So there we are.
When does it say the lectures were in your notebooks, Tasha?
Yeah, they were in February, 5th of February, started in 5th of February, 1971. at the 211 Canal Street. And the Zhongyong, as René will tell you, started in 1973, in May 1973. And we had a weekly class. And yeah, as I said, I wish I'd understood more at the time.
That was great. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. We're going to go now to Bill Phillips, and Bill's going to share a few of his memories and a couple of notes. Bill?
Hi. First of all, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mainly want to share one particular thing that he said because he thought it was extremely important, and that was what has been given as a doctrine of the mean, or meaning average, was not what was meant by Confucius. I have my audio cassette tapes, and I haven't listened to them lately, so I don't know where, what day he may have said it, but I was at Morty and Ling's house, and Professor was the guest of honor, and he kind of got a hold of me because I was a slow learner. And through Ling, he explained to me that it wouldn't be something for sages to study if it was the doctrine of the average, but it means to do not too much and not too little, to do it not too early and not too late. And that's a principle of the exact appropriate or exact balance. And that was what he thought Confucius meant. And it was principles that you could study pretty much forever in terms of your own behavior and constantly be making refinements. So that was what Professor really wanted. He wanted Tai Chi for our bodies, our minds, our meditation, our yoga, but he thought that how we acted was very important. And I don't know that it's, you know, philosophy in that sense is one of the 5 excellences, but it was something that he felt was extremely important. I have memories also of the class that Natasha was talking about. And fortunately, Professor didn't speak a lot of Chinese too often. He would say a little bit, and then Dr. Ren would translate a little bit. You can see in the pictures that that was shown, I'm sitting off to the side. It was the days before I had a mustache and I was skinny, but I thought the classes were extremely important as the Tai Chi, because it explained the importance of these concepts of doing right action and all the things that happen to right thought and right action throughout. Does anyone have a question about any of this that I could answer, or maybe Katie or Natasha could answer better?
Well, just if I may, I should have said that. Thank you, Bill, for saying that, because, you know, that was, as you say, it was so important to Professor Cheng that really it's about cultivating oneself. And the thing about the Tai Chi, it's not about power and pushing and all that kind of thing. It's about self-cultivation. That's why we were studying the Tai Chi Chuan, the actual form was, you know, he didn't emphasize the fighting. He'd done a lot of fighting when he was younger, but when he came to us, it was a philosophy in action. And that's why he complemented it with these lectures, because it was about cultivating yourself to become a proper person. And even the calligraphy was, he changed his own calligraphy from being more with flair when he was younger to then he went back and studied that in the Tai Chi principles, the horizontal should be horizontal, the upright should be upright. And that cultivates an upright person. And that's what we should strive to become, is honest and upright and, you know, generous and all the qualities basically. So thank you for reminding us.
And thank you for stating it in a different way, because people need to hear it. The more they hear it, the more different ways they hear it. perhaps the better we can be.
Great. Well, thank you. René, do you want to share your comments and memories? We'll come back to everybody with questions at the end, Bill.
Okay.
Do
René?
you want to see Katy?
Oh, Katy,
Yeah.
did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Okay. Natasha says very good. Tai Chi is the most important is self-cultivation. And, it's not try to hit somebody. The most is inside ourselves. And Zhong Yung, because I like to talk about Zhong Yung. A while ago, my father said that he emphasized the translation is entirely wrong. That's make the people. It's important things to try to taught all the world, especially American. Okay, because the richness and the poorness is very apart, lots different, right? So when people get rich, they try to get eating more, everything try to get the more better and better. And actually, that's not the way we try to live. Because you see the old time people get less illness because the eating not so rich and the food just enough for living, but the make people more happy, more satisfied. And if we try to try to get better in that way, your mind, inside mind is not happy, right? So that's what he liked to bring to all of us to know. The translation about the words is talk about the cutting off the just try to be balanced, like Zhong Yung, right? Zhong Yung, you try to be balanced and equalizing and not too much, not too less, or not too fast, not too slow. Everything is in the Zhong Yung. Zhong is a middle, the main, right? The middle way. And that's what Confucius is talk about. The Confucianism is very talk about the Zhong Yung is very important. And it's also related with Tai Chi, right? You see, my father called a name Shr Jung in Taiwan and in New York. Shr Jung just try to make people think about the Zhong Yung. Okay, Zhong Yung is everything balanced. See, if the Tai Chi symbol, in the center of Tai Chi symbol is a Zhong, middle, right? Zhong, and the Yung is yin and the yang, outside the circling, the changeable. So the Zhong Yung is working in the Tai Chi is very good. And Tao have 3 different ways. Tao is the heaven, the Tao of heaven is yin yang, and Tao of the earth is soft and the hardness, and the Tao of the human being is Ren is like what you call righteousness and the kindness, and the heaven and the earth and people, human is in the middle. So the Zhong Yung is really good for the human being, because we stand on the earth and our head is suspended the heaven, and we're in the center, try to be balance good, and the way, even the outside the form, not only talk about outside form, it's the inside. Inside's balance is just like Natasha talking about the self-cultivating. We try to self-cultivating with Shr Jung. Everything try, okay, whenever, my father is very good. Whenever there's a very nice food, we say, oh, but Daddy, try this is real good. And he just tried a little bit. Then he said, okay, good. Then we said, eat more, that's you like it. And he said, no, okay, it's enough. He don't try to, even it's bitterness, he was eating a little bit. If a very good food, and he also eating a little bit. He don't try to be overeating or overdoing. You know, it's really, he's very what do you call, harmony, inside harmony. It's important for the happiness.
Great.
That's
Well, thank you, Katie, for those comments. Really appreciate it. René, do you have a few notes or comments you want to make? Is René there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I disappeared momentarily, or my computer did, but I'm back.
Okay.
So, first of all, I really appreciate being asked to look into this again, because I had taken that workshop, that series of lectures, and it was, 47 years ago, something like that. And I really haven't looked at the notes in all that time. And so this gave me an opportunity to look at them again and to realize the enormity of what Professor got done in that 3.5-month period of time. He did, as you might expect, a sort of very brilliant thing, which is that he, and any one of the lectures is a lifetime of study. So I'm not going to go into, obviously, any kind of detail. But the way he seemed to handle it, looking back on the notes and realizing that that matched my experience of it at the time, was that he introduced really some major, a sort of canopy of major concepts that had to do with Confucianism, Taoism, and our practice as students. And so let me see if I can, so he was, as Katie said, he introduced the notion of heaven and earth and humans being in between those two things. And he said, heaven is great and earth is great and humans are also great, that they do have their place. And he used that as a call to the value of humans and the need for humans to have, if I remember the way the word was translated correctly, as sort of self-respect, which was linked to the notion of cultivation. Obviously, he talked about Jung, and I remember his really emphasizing that part of the problem with scholars subsequent to Confucius was that they tried to analyze those two words, those two characters separately, which he felt was a major error, that to try to disentangle those Zhong and Yung, excuse me, I don't speak Chinese, Mandarin, or any Chinese, from the idea of trying to dismantle Zhong and Yung was just a major error, because the concept was in that unity. He talked about Tao. He talked about, again, excuse my translation, Ren, which is usually translated as benevolence. Tam seemed to refer to it as by a slightly different word. But what I was most struck by in the notes and in my memory was the quality of his demeanor, of Professor's relationship to the material and to the people in the room. because when he spoke of benevolence, in the Western system, we say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And in the Eastern, for Confucian, it was the same concept, but expressed in the negative. Don't do unto others what you wouldn't have them do unto you. The professor said, well, this is about benevolence. And I remember very clearly his saying that, or again, the translation, that it was about spreading kindness and loving the children of others as you love your own. And then he paused and said, as you love your students. So he was creating a sort of a family within that room. But what I, just completely subjectively, what I recall most of all was that what he was doing felt like a very large, gentle, booming call. I felt like he was calling everyone in that room to follow his example, which was present in front of us, in terms of using these concepts not as an academic exercise, but as a form of self-cultivation. So he was essentially giving us homework, a kind of lifetime of homework. And I'm sort of, pleased at the notes, and just, I mean, they really stuck with me. So it really was more than an academic exercise, a sort of challenge to how you might want to proceed with your life, and not in a cultish way, but that these principles that we were thinking about in the lectures, that we were practicing in a palpable way in doing Tai Chi Chuan, were a gift and a beauty and a way to conduct ourselves on a day-to-day basis. So it had a huge impact. There was this model in front of us, and here were all these basically, I was a kid, all these sort of twerps sitting uncomfortably on cushions, not accustomed to it, being offered this model for what we might want to be looking for the beauties we might want to be looking for in our day-to-day lives.
Great. Is that it, René?
Yeah, that's
okay.
That's it. That's what I got.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. We're going to go to questions in just a moment, but we want to first go to Stephen Rose. Stephen has notes that Tam Gibbs took at the lectures, and he would like to share those. So Stephen, do you want to go ahead? Stephen, are you there?
I am here.
All right.
I'm trying to, okay.
There we go.
Thank you. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, what I do have are notes from Tam's class. Tam's classes were frequently small, and when they were at their smallest, he would bring out these notes and read them to us and then comment. And I have a few that I've chosen that talk about the relationship between the Chung Yung and Tai Chi. And I'm just going to read them, and then I'll mention Tam's comments. The first one, and these were on various days. These all did not happen at the same time. The first one he says is, this is Tam quoting Professor. There is a very important relationship between Chung Yung and Tai Chi. Why or how is it that Chung Yung has such an important relationship to Tai Chi Chuan? It has to do with balance and the center of balance. The most important part of Chung Yung is the center of gravity. The next most important place is the, quote, precise timing in center, Chung Yung. Sorry, Shr Jung. We're continually centered in that center of balance all of the time. The important relationship between center of balance and precise timing, they are mutually interlocking. I feel that Cheng Jung, in relation to Tai Chi Chuan, the two come together. The principle of Cheng Jung and Tai Chi boxing come together to make a way of living as human beings. Then Tam said that to discuss the Cheng Jung was very difficult. But then he stopped and he said, that's not true. He said, it's actually very simple. The difficult part of the Cheng Jung is how to be a human being. And then he discussed, this is at a different time, and it was during Pushing Hands, and he referred back to this, the Cheng Jung, and he talked about the horizontal and the vertical. And the vertical was what he referred to as equilibrium, and the horizontal was harmony. And where those intersect is a 90 degrees. So we have no control over what happens at the terminals of the horizontal. If it's heavy on the right goes down. If it's heavy on the left goes down. So to maintain the horizontal, one must move the vertical to compensate for the changes at the extreme. And those were practical words that came after watching us do Pushing Hands. And another note from the professor says, this is a little difficult to understand. Combining equilibrium and harmony and the always precisely centered with eternal virtue and eternal word to form a single construct signifying divine sincerity, that is absolute integrity and oneness with nature. This is the state which, once attained, will open the way to the center without further difficulty. That, to me, that's not easy to comprehend. Then Tam said, the most important thing is no matter what the time, what the circumstances, what the place, is to always be able to maintain harmony, which means that equilibrium has to be constantly changing. And then another quote, a comparison of Cheng Jung and Tai Chi is of special interest where the meanings show both the sharp and functional the sharp contrast and functional interconnections. Tai Chi forms the extremes of Cheng Jung and acting as the agency of motion with Cheng Jung, the connecting rod or axis. Tai Chi is the real palpable manifestation of the interplay of yin and yang, the forces of change that result in the creation of all forms that exist on earth. When we investigate the back and forth flow of yin and yang, seeking herein to discover a central and immutable principle, we approach Cheng Jung. And this is Tam's comments. Cheng Jung has a set idea to it. If we think about it, both what is seen and is unseen, then it becomes obvious why we must understand the principle of Cheng Jung in order to understand the full meaning of Tai Chi. Tam emphasized that knowing Tai Chi but not Cheng Jung misses the point. To know change without knowing what is unyielding, one will never understand the nature and the purpose of Tai Chi. And that's just what I have more notes, but this is what I chose to share today with a connection between Tai Chi and Cheng Jung.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that, Stephen.
Certainly, you're welcome.
Hang around. We may have some questions for you. Stanley, you've had your hand up first. Why don't you go ahead and ask your question or make your comment?
Yes, I think first I'd like to say thanks to Daniel. I think he made a great work on to do the subtitle. And that day we discussed several things, but I did not figure out. I think until this morning I watched again, I realized Professor Cheng mentioned he used a very unusual term. He mentioned 瞿塘先生。瞿塘先生means Gautama. This means Buddha, because Confucianism in Song Dynasty is influenced by Buddhism, but the Han Dynasty is not. So that's just I figured out that just a while ago. So I will put that on the chat. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Daniel.
Thank you. I wanted to first of all thank you, Stanley. That was that's an amazing insight and a great addition to that. That was a puzzle that we were able to figure out. I do want to thank Stanley. I called him up around 11 at night to check my translations, and he was very kind. You know, grabbing him out of bed to help me with this. So definitely thank Stanley for his help. I wanted to just talk briefly about the context of that clip. I think there were some questions in there about what the reference was with Professor in what he was talking about with two different commentaries. What Barbara was talking about with Confucius. So he was in the Zhou dynasty, which is several hundred years in the BCE, and he was building up, as Barbara said, a certain ethics on how to live. Now, shooting down to the 1100s, the 12th century, there was a huge movement, as Stanley just alluded to, of intermarriage between different religions. The Buddhism and Taoism and Confucianism were all stealing from each other, or if you want to say nicely, borrowing from each other. And the commentary that I believe Professor is talking about in how he's explaining the Gewu, analyzing, comes from Zhu Xi, who was a reformer of Confucianism, what's called Neo-Confucianism. And so that was a big movement to make Confucianism more interesting to people, kind of like what the Roman Catholic Church did in the 70s and 80s to attract people away from the mysticism and coolness of other thoughts and religions. And so he was redesigned a lot of the Confucian ideas. And so the Gewu, Professor was saying, in the first interpretation of that flower, he would say like Gewu is to analyze. The word Ge is to divide or separate. So one context of that is to divide things up, to analyze it. And that was Zhu Xi's ideas, to investigate the inner meaning of everything. But he said that missed the meaning of what the original Confucius idea was, which is to Ge also means, because it means to cut, it means to cut out. So what he thought, what Professor was saying is that Confucius, the earlier commentary was closer to Confucius in that it was to cut out things that you don't need. So I just wanted to bring that context out for clarification. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Daniel. Carol, you have your hand up?
Yes, I was at all the lectures, as far as I know. They were deeply important to me at the time, the Chung Young lectures. And I took many notes, but I would just like to share two very important things that have been important to me my whole rest of the life, deeply from those lectures. One is I had been a very active hippie with all the wonderful things and all the excesses and all the foolishness that that implied. And this was after that time. And so it was just the right time for me to hear this particular thing from Professor in this setting. And what he said was, he was quoting from the text, and I have my notes actually from the text the way he said it, but it was that if you did the right thing in your closet, when nobody would ever know if you would do the right thing or not, that's when it would matter. You know, you little minute things, you think nobody's watching or whatever, all of that doesn't matter. It's in your closet. Nobody's ever going to know whether you're doing the right thing or not. And that's when it would matter. I heard that deeply at that time. And the second thing is about Mahayana Buddhism, which was, interestingly enough, the professor was cognizant of at that time and conversant with, because I have a deep background in Buddhism. My whole adult life since then, I've been deeply involved in Zen. I lived in Zen centers and monasteries for more than 20 years. And I became involved in that because of Ed, because I heard on the grapevine, actually from Tyrone, that Ed at the time was sitting Zazen. And so I started sitting Zazen back then because I've heard about Ed doing it. And in the notes, Professor said this, and I'm going to quote from my notes here, which was just marvelous. He said, he was talking about Lao Tzu at the time. And he said, this is what my notes say, but the professor doesn't desire to be immortal. He would be lonely in heaven by himself. He would rather be with friends. And then quote, there was a bodhisattva who said, as long as there are people in hell, I don't want to be a Buddha, unquote, from the professor, from my notes. That may be the first time I ever heard the word bodhisattva, which of course is throughout in Mahayana Buddhism is the ideal that you delay your own enlightenment until all beings are enlightened. So the fact that he was conversant with Buddhism and used that term was just magnificent. And I didn't learn that until really notice it until a couple of years ago when I was going back over my notes that he had said that. And then just in closing, I'll just say a few sentences about how he began the lectures from my notes. This is the introductory lecture, and just to give the personal sense of it, he said, the Republic of China was founded the 10th day of the 10th month. Today is the 5th day of the 5th month. Beginning of our lectures on Confucius. In China, 2,000 years ago, there were 3 religions, Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. In the Song dynasty, Confucius' teachings were taken away as a religion. They were not a religion, they were considered an education, a learning. How ought a man to do? How should a man be and act? Today, this begins in the West. I want to sweep Confucius' doorstep, is what he said. And he said, it takes the strength of 9 oxen and 5 horses to bring the lecture across. The translation is a deep and profound business. I'm going to end right here. The doctrine of the mean, in the last 2,000 years, there hasn't been anyone who's understood it completely. My explanation is superficial. Think about man, think about ourselves. What does this teaching really mean? How does it affect us? Look in the mirror. Do I dress like I respect myself and care about people I meet? Everyone is my teacher. Thank you very much for letting me relish these thoughts again.
Thank you, Carol. Natasha, you had your hand up?
Yeah, just to say, Carol's, just now she was talking about the 10 eyes. Where is it? Can you see it? That's the character De, which is translated as virtue or whatever, benevolence or whatever. No, not benevolence is the Ren. The De is like 2 people, and then there's 10 eyes, 1 heart on the right side. And it's like, that's when he was talking about behave as if 10 pairs of, always behave when you're by yourself as if 10 pairs of eyes were looking at you.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I remember him saying like that. You think nobody can see you, but they can. They all can.
Right.
Everybody can.
So
yeah.
always behave as if, as if people.
That's right. Exactly right. Yes, thank you for that.
In other words, don't do anything that you wouldn't do in public, in private.
Exactly right. That's what he said.
Great, thank you.
the old time Chinese character, right? It's like a picture, and the 10 under the 10 is an eye. So
Yeah.
eye, you know, and that's a two humans stand by,
Yeah.
and with one heart. Yeah, also in the picture. Okay, and if I can talk a little bit, I like to show. I have the book. If you're interested, this book have all the translation. Can you see that?
Yes.
Lao Tzu. Okay, and it's published in the Berkeley, California. But this book have every page have a translation. It says easy. My words are easy, so it's easy to read it.
Great.
And I like to share. My father is highly respected and loved Confucius, and he called his Confucius. My father called him Ni Fu. Ni Fu, you know, Confucius' nickname is Zhong Ni. So he called Ni Fu. Fu is the father. My father respecting Lao Kongzi always said like his father, you know, and that's why he translated a lot of Confucius books, and also he's my father in Christ. In later when I first believed in God, and my mother was mad because my mother is Buddhism at that time, and then later she became Christian also. You know, my mother was very mad about I believe I changed. Actually, I never be the Buddhism, but my mother wish we can be the Buddhism, but I don't like it. And when I went to the Japan, and you know, I heard the preacher talk about. At that time, I accepted Jesus Christ. So I talked. My father said, "What you make mother so mad about? Coming to my room, talk about that." Then I tell him, because I believe in Christ, mother get mad on me, but I have to tell her I believe in God because God is so kindness, and He sent His only loving Son to die for us. And I told my father, you know, it's in the Bible 2,000 years ago. It's talk about the Messiah going to born in the Jerusalem, right? And Bethlehem, and also his name's Jesus. That's truly writing before he born 2,000 years ago. And my father believed that. He said, "Oh, that's true. I love it. I believe it." He at that time he believed that. Okay, so I asked my father, "Is Confucius believing in God or not?" He said he believed in God because lots of time in his writing he showed me, but I forgot where. But you know, he said that he know Confucius is believing God. So it's talking about the Tao in heaven. Is talking about everlasting. You know, like it's a heaven is a God's. You know, so it's that's my father tried to tell me.
Okay, thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
Carol, why don't you go ahead and make your comment, and then we're going to wrap it up after that. I have a closing comment to make from Redmond and I to everyone. So go ahead, Carol.
Okay, my hand happened to stay up. I wasn't going to actually talk.
Okay.
But that's okay. No, I have one thing to say. It was in the second lecture, and he said, Mencius said, man is by nature good, And Confucius said to be closer to man's basic nature is good. It's through habit that we become distant from man's basic nature. I'll close with that. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I would like to, if I may, just one
Sure.
thought, because we're working on the idea of self perfection. There was something, I don't know if it's coming out on the camera very well, but Professor had something to the right of my desk engraved. Self-correction is done in taking thought in quietude, hand composed in a manner of respect, feet bear heavy weight, to prop up straight the backbone. Be cautious in speech and make them to the point. Don't let mouth lose its reins and run off. Heart must be open and broad. In dealing with people, one must be true and make allowances for them. The ability to endure is learned when one's attitude is mild and humble. They used to give that out on Rexograph sheets. I had a student do it up nicely, and I thought, I didn't think of it when I was talking, but I thought to share that.
Can you
Hi,
share,
Bill.
send a copy of that to Redmond that we can share with other people?
That's
Yes.
lovely.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I have only Chinese. I don't have English one.
I
Can
have
you
the
just,
English one. I'll
share
mail
with
you a copy
everyone?
too, Katie.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, thank you,
Thank
Bill. As I mentioned earlier, this is our last session until September 8th. Just have a comment to make here at the end. We share a common Tai Chi lineage in the same way a family shares a common parentage. The values, both implicit and explicit, have been passed from one generation to the next. It's our responsibility to honor what we've been given by using it to deepen our understanding of Tai Chi. I'll never have another class with my teachers. I will never have another conversation with my parents. Even though classes and conversations have ceased, my understanding of their teaching continues to grow and to evolve. This is the last session of the forum before we take a break. During the month of August and the first week of September, we will return to the forum on September 8th. Redmond and I greatly appreciate your support for the forum. We'd like to thank all of you for your generosity in sharing some of your time with us as presenters, as commenters, as questioners, and simply as observers. We're appreciative of the respectful tone that has been evolving as the forum progresses. It is respect for Professor Cheng and our common lineage, which has brought us together. And it is respect for each other that allows us to discuss and grow in our understanding of his teaching. We hope to continue to offer the forum as a place where students in the lineage of Professor Cheng can continue to respectfully share, explore, and dialogue on topics that enrich both our Tai Chi practice and our lives. So again, thanks for your support. Thanks for making it all possible. And we will, as the song says, see you in September.